Welcome to a very special edition of The Piano Men with Stanley Carr here on Double. We've got a very special guest on the phone tonight. I am pleased to welcome to the program Emmy Award-winning keyboardist, arranger, composer, and conductor Doug Katsaros. Doug has worked with some of the biggest recording artists such as Elton John, Gloria Estefan, Rod Stewart, Bon Jovi, and many others. He's also worked on Broadway musicals such as Diamonds and My Name is Alice, in addition to scoring for many motion pictures. Doug's work on television shows and productions includes the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, the Tony Awards, and Oprah. Doug also wrote the score for the Fox animated series The Tick, which aired from 1994 to 1996. He currently resides in New York City with his wife, jazz musician Elise Morris. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Hey, Stanley, good to be here.
Oh, thank you for coming on.
I couldn't stop myself.
All right. Let's get things started. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I was actually born in Long Island, but I was 4 years old. We moved to a little town called, not too little, called Doylestown in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, right near a place called the Bucks County Playhouse. So there was also always lots of theater going on, and I went to school. Was the piano player for the choir, and played at a church. I was 13 years old, and this young guy named Gordon Drott was a new minister at a new church, and he came knocking on my door. And said, I understand there's a young piano player here. I was 13, but apparently I already had some sort of terrible reputation. And he followed it up, and I became the musical director of that little church, the Pebble Hill Community Church. And he would throw records in front of me, like back in the day. This was in the was this even the 60s, late 60s? Mm-hmm. He ain't heavy, he's my brother, that kind of thing. And he would say, now, can you learn that and then play that on Sunday? And, he would say, we'll get together on Tuesday and we'll listen, and then we'll practice on Wednesday, and then on Friday we'll do something, and on Saturday we'll run it through, and then on Sunday morning you'll be ready. And I didn't want to do that much work, and I got pretty soon to the place where I would just show up on Sunday morning like an hour early and say, play me what you got, and he would play a song, and as it would play, I would transcribe it as it would go down and write it out on a couple pieces of paper. I had a bass player and a little drummer, and I would give them little sheets, and we had shorthand, and I learned in that tender age to do things quickly, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of music passed through me, and by the time I was 18, I was on my way to New York.
Wow, that's a great story. It's really a great story. What really made you want to pursue a career as a keyboardist?
I was kind of steered to it. I really wanted to be a lot of other things. I wanted to be an actor, or I wanted to be I really wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be Norman Rockwell. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do Saturday evening Post covers, stuff like that. And I sent away for the painting, can you paint contests and stuff like that. So I would do the posters in high school for the show. They said, well, you can do the poster as long as you play the piano for the thing, and you can. Sure, you can act in it as long as as you do the rehearsals for the kids, and the thing. And finally, my first job, I think, was as a stuntman at an amusement park. That was my first union job. Got me into the American Guild of Variety Artists as a stuntman. But the guy who played the piano at the Gay 90s Review fell ill, and I went in and I took over for him, and joined another union, and it was all of a sudden they started paying me a lot more for playing piano. And I kept thinking, this is so easy. How can I make a living at this? This is easy. I really have to work at painting, and I have to really work at, stunt work is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Falling off roofs and getting shot in the feet, is hard. But playing piano was always a snap.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that, this is what they're going to pay me for.
So it's...
it made the decision pretty easy. And when I first moved to New York, it was to go to, it's sort of famous for people in the theater. I was one of the first members of the BMI Musical Theater Workshop class under a cat named Lehman Engel, one of the great masters, conductors of the theater. And in this class were people like Alan Menken,
mm-hmm.
who you may
Beauty and the Beast,
know as the composer of pretty much everything Disney in the last 20 years. And Ed Kleban, who wrote Chorus Line, and wonderful people like this, Maury Yeston, who wrote Titanic, the musical, and I was part of this burgeoning class there, and through that, I was introduced to the Urban Arts Corps, and I was the only little white kid in this all black company of people, because I went and I was able to play. They said, play something in reggae, and I was able to, kajaka, and
mm-hmm.
do a little thing, and I've had a very weird, off-kilter, wonderful set of circumstances that has always kept making music very interesting.
So were you ever self-taught, or where did you get your training?
No, somehow I missed the whole drugs part of the of the growing up
sure.
in the 70s thing. I was very scared of it,
mm-hmm.
and I always was the designated driver.
Yeah.
I never got into alcohol or drugs. Listen well, kids. But I did make a lot of music, and I did make a lot of friends, and that was important. And it didn't seem important. I was always really happy, playing. I didn't see the need to escape because things were pretty nice. I had supportive parents, a couple of brothers, all doing their own thing. Everybody was pretty happy where I was, so there was no real need for escape. And when I needed to escape, I'd go sit at the piano and close my eyes and write something.
Who were some of your earliest influences as a piano player and as a musician?
Well, as a musician, I guess at that time, so much was happening. I was 10 years old when the Beatles hit Ed Sullivan. And immediately I got to learn how to play bass so I can be Paul. Mm-hmm. So I learned how to play bass. And then I had already learned how to play a little guitar. I was very musical as a kid. I played a little guitar. I learned how to play bass. I picked up a little drums. I learned how to play a B-flat scale on as many instruments as I could, just so that I could say the word embouchure without embarrassing myself. And I'd have to say, as far as songwriting, it's got to be Lennon McCartney. But as far as making music, it was the progressive bands like Yes or Rush or Genesis or those type of experimental English bands who were just trying out new things, new time signatures, new ways. And then the Kennedy Center opened, and Leonard Bernstein wrote Mass, and I was freaking blown away by just what could happen. I already was familiar with him through, West Side Story and
sure.
whatever, and the Chichester Psalms and, the wonderful music that he had written that's very American. Aaron Copland. I love that Americana stuff, those happy,
like classical
5-chord over a 1-chord, so that I'm talking music. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
So that you get all those, major ninths, but you leave out the third, and all those, like hoedown or whatever that's. That to me was just so striking in his use of percussion instruments, along with the music. I just heard that, and when I heard Mass, and I heard how he had combined his symphonic sense with his jazz sense, very jazzy, with his even a little attempts at rock and roll and whatever. I just wanted to be all these people, and eventually, many things in my life have had an opportunity to come around full circle in one way or another. In this particular case, he had written Mass to open the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and a few years ago, just before the turn of the century, I was conducting Footloose that was coming to Broadway. And the first place we played out of town was the Kennedy Center, the same theater where, Bernstein's Ghost and all those ghosts were all living. And I was in the conductor's chair in front of the pit, in front of the stage, where Mass had opened this place. And it was, it truly allowed me to say the word awesome in its heaviest possible permutation.
And of course, they've got the Kennedy Center honors every year, so
yeah,
definitely a beautiful little a big auditorium for musicians and for concerts, and
it's stunning, and it's set up like an opera house, So I had not only my own dressing room as the conductor,
sure,
but a room and an assistant and a piano and it was like a meditation place, with my own a private bathroom. It was really something, to be one of the people who had conducted there. I remember when I was young, my dad loved music. Both my mom was very artistic. My dad was a draftsman, so he's still alive. He's 90, going to be 99 this year, or 98 or 99, something crazy.
It's crazy.
But when he worked, he was a draftsman, so he was very artistic, not musical, but he loved music, and the music he loved was both symphonic and jazzy. So a clarinet cat named Jimmy Jeffrey was a big influence. Very cool, tangents in jazz. Like a clarinet and a bass and a muted trumpet was like the band.
Like that bebop.
Very cool 3-part, stuff. And then of course I was learning on the piano the Bach 3-part things,
sure.
and I would turn the music upside down and try to play it and try to swing it, And then I had a teacher, a piano teacher, who didn't want to teach me Beethoven and Bach, and she wanted to teach me Kabalevsky, and she wanted to teach me Greek, and people who didn't write in major scales. She wanted to teach me people who wrote in crazy rhythms and fun major minor 7/5 chords. Just it was, and I was 13. So all this was going on. Anyway, my dad also a folk musician, and so I got a feeling for Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Puff the Magic Dragon, and all this sort of fun stuff. And I would take a guitar on the school bus, and other kids would have their guitars on the school bus. We'd be going to elementary school at 9, 10, and 11 years old, and playing Bob Dylan tunes and Peter, Paul, and Mary tunes. And eventually, I got a chance to play on 3 or Peter, Paul, and Mary later records and musical directed them at their sessions at 54. So, again, the fact that the music of my youth that inspired me became part of my grown-up life in actual musical terms, it's been like a miraculous journey.
You began your professional career in the late 70s working on KISS member Paul Stanley's solo debut album. Tell me about your experience working with him.
Well, it was a whole series of events that led to that. I had a girlfriend named Indira, and Indira had a boyfriend before me named Pepe Castro, and Pepe was a member of an iconic, well-known 60s band called the Blues Magoos. Their big hit was "We Ain't Got Nothing Yet." Da 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 da. For those of you listening who are old enough to remember, and Pepe was one of the writers and lead vocalist, and he was in that band, and so he was well connected. He's from Long Island, and had was quite famous, and so he was a go-to guy, and he was familiar with the Cats and Kiss as they were forming, and he was a friend of Paul's, and I believe through him, well, he and I went out to Los Angeles. He had written a crazy musical about self-help called Zen Boogie, and I was, Pepe and I were introduced through the girlfriend, and we hit it off really well, and I became his musical go-to guy because he would write, and then I would interpret and write it out on paper, or be his piano player. And so I went out to musical direct Zen Boogie for him. And while we were in Los Angeles, the guys in KISS were doing their solo albums, and Paul was out there, and we had a couple of dinners. And Paul was looking for some songs for his record, and I had a couple of songs. So I said, well, let me play a couple things. And I played him some songs, and he said, the truth is, I really need to write my own stuff. I'm freaking Paul Stanley of KISS. I should write my own stuff. I think that's how he put it. But you've inspired me. So he wrote a song called "Hold Me, Touch Me," and said, "Why don't you come and play this? We'll make it a piano song instead of a guitar song." He played it on guitar first, and then he said, "I think it should be a piano song." So I played it, and then we put some string synthesizers on it. And I think that's pretty much all that made it onto the records, like piano and synthesizers. And that was it. I think I sang some backgrounds on that and a couple other tunes. And I met Bobby Kulick there, I think, whose brother Bruce went on to play with KISS. And Bob and Pepe and I then joined together and formed a band called Balance in the late 70s, early 80s. And that's a whole other story.
So we'll go ahead and we'll play "Hold Me, Touch Me," and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Balance. You're listening to The Piano Men with Stanley Carr. Very nice, very nice. You're tuned to The Piano Men.
That brings back a lot of memories.
Oh, it does. It's a really good song. You're tuned into The Piano Men with Stanley Carr. We're talking with Doug Katsaros tonight about his legendary career. So you were mentioning earlier about your hard rock band Balance. In the early 80s, you had the song "Breaking Away." That was a hit, and it reached number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah, it almost broke that 20.
Yeah, I know. Can you describe your time with the band?
Oh, goodness. I still keep in touch with the Cats. I just spoke to Pepe not 2 hours ago. And Pepe and I and Bobby and I are both working on other projects. But back in the day, Andy Newmark, on drums from Double Fantasy, John Lennon's Double Fantasy, and Willie Weeks, who went on to join the Doobies, and John Siegler played bass. Some great people, but there was mostly Peppy, Bobby, and me. We would write the songs. We go in. We went into Power Station. Had Tony Bon Jovi, who's Bon Jovi's cousin, and brilliant engineer. And we went in and put out a record and did okay. We have disagreements to this day about what happened with the record and what could have happened and what should have happened and the order that songs were released and whatever. We had 3 different ways to approach the band. Peppy was a rock icon and an ace songwriter. Bobby was a ferocious, heavy guitar player, one of the great melodic soloists. And I was theatery, could read music, did orchestrations, and came at it from a not heavily classical, but certainly what's the word? Not adult, just a different edge, or a lack of edge. I wanted to make it all pretty, and Peppy wanted to make it all pop, and Bobby wanted to make it all rock. So that there was the balance thing. We were all very melodic. I'm not sure it was a heavy metal band so much as a melodic metal band, like in Foreigner Journey kind of, songs, rather than really, the dark, super repetitive, hooky, or line, line metal things. We were a melodic rock band. But we had a great time. Peppy and I did all the vocals. And Breaking Away was certainly a door opener. On the other hand, it had a little drum machine in it, which always freaked me out from the get-go. And in the middle, I remember doing that boom, whack, boom, whack. And what we did was we took some bricks and we put them in the middle of the studio and then put a 4x8 sheet of plywood on the bricks, and then we jumped on it.
Oh, man.
And that was the boom. And then I think the whack was we all hit each other. And we got microphones on it. We were slapping our shirts, slapping our hands, or slapping our faces.
So kind of like a stomp the yard type
young,
of thing.
Stupid rock and rollers.
Wow.
Looking for a sound. And then Bon Jovi, Tony made it sound incredible. And then then there were I was certainly every time it played on the radio, I had their playing our song syndrome. I would throw the top of my car down and scream out, "I'm on the radio!" And I was really happy with the songs that I had written for the band. A lot of the songs were Peppy-driven, but I was able to get some writing out, things like Fly Through the Night. Were very pianoistic and showed a lot of where my sensibilities in trying to take the band somewhere lyrically and musically would be. So, tell my stories. So it was great fun, and it lasted for a few years. We did a few concerts, but we had interesting problems with concerts because we were a really good band live, and so people didn't want us to open for them. Gotcha. I remember we opened a couple of shows for Hall & Oates, and they were like, "We love you guys. You can't open for us."
Bummer.
It's not happening because you guys are really great, and we just want somebody to set us up. This is how I remember it anyway. And then they'd pair us with people who were absolutely not our audience, like the Rossington Collins Band, which was like Leonard Skinner, sort of after the plane crash, turned into the Rossington Collins Band, and they're, a southern, Sweet Home Alabama kind of thing. And we were not. We were like East Coast Toto.
Yeah.
So
kind of a different
they people they'd open the curtain. We'd hear something like, oh, I'm sorry, Grand Funk couldn't make it tonight, but we have this fun new band from New York called Balance. And we'd say, what? And the curtain would go up, and we'd see all these 10-gallon hats tilt to the side, wondering what was going on. And there we were in our spandex and our long hair. It's like, okay, well, this we'll get through 5 songs, and if they don't throw any more bottles at us, we'll get off the stage. And then the band fell apart. But 30 years later, we threw out another record. It was very interesting because we did it without seeing each other. Bobby put his parts on in Los Angeles, and I did my stuff in here in New York, and Pepe was in Florida or wherever he was, upstate maybe. And we put our record together, and we didn't see each other, and we sent it out. And it is what it is. It's kind of weird, but we're, bands do what they do, whatever. It's like a little family, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's wacky. I did a bunch of projects with Bob, a thing called Sinatra, which was Sinatra songs sung by heavy metal artists, and then a couple things with Dee Snider, he's turned out to be a great friend. But Dee does Broadway, in which we did a bunch of iconic Broadway songs, Dee Snider singing the lead, and Bobby Kulick doing the chordal and rock, the very heavy metal arrangements, and then me writing symphonic orchestrations behind them.
Oh my God!
So
that's crazy.
That's a crazy thing. You should look it up. It's very obscure, but to hear Dee does Broadway. There's even a video that they made of Mac the Knife, and if you want to be in for a crazy treat, you'll see me playing piano.
Okay.
And you will see Dee being introduced as Dean Schneider, singing Mac the Knife, and it's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. You should look it up. With Pepe, Bob wrote the SpongeBob SquarePants tune.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's
amazing.
Yeah, he wrote that, and
wow.
Yeah, that is astonishing, and so they're considering some re-releases, and it's all very exciting what's going on with that. And Pepe and I, Pepe's been delving into musicals. He's written a couple of pieces, and we're working on a project I actually can't talk about right now, but because it's sort of high profile, so it's very nice, but wow. it's not to be talked about. But we're definitely working together, and the way we're doing this is wonderfully. He is trusting my theater instincts, so he starts writing the tunes. He'll write like a verse and a hook or something like that, and then he'll send it to me and say, okay, there's 6 more pages of lyrics, and you flesh it out, this thing. And so I'm taking what he's doing and turning it into Broadway, because it's not a rock piece of theater. Mm-hmm. It's an actual piece of theater, like, Sweeney Todd or whatever, mm-hmm. And so I'm taking what he's doing and adding my spin to it. So we're co-writing it as one dual entity.
Wow.
So, to this day, into our mid to late 60s, we're still, making music together.
That's wonderful to hear. So what I'll do is, since we got a little bit, we got about 25 minutes. I'm going to throw out some names of some of the other artists you've worked with, and just give me a little bit, just a couple of words, if you can. What was it like to work with them? We'll start with Rod Stewart.
Okay, so a lot of my work is behind the scenes. And a lot of my work is done in secret. And a lot of my work is done cleaning things up or starting things off as an arranger or a pianist or something. And so while I have platinum records with dozens of people, the close proximity often happens in other places than the studio. I do my part, they do their part, or vice versa. They do their part, I do my part. So for Rod Stewart, for example, Clive Davis asked Phil Ramone, the great producer, to put together a group of people who would come up with arrangements, dance arrangements for the American Songbook for Rod Stewart. He was trying something new. Rod was in Los Angeles. We were in New York. And we spent days in, I think it was H&R Studios, H&M Studios, and with a band and an orchestra and synthesizers recreating orchestra parts. And Clive was in Bermuda or something, and we would play him the parts over the phone, and then he would say, "Oh, I can dance to it, I can whatever, you know." And then we would take those charts and then send them to Rod Stewart, who would then say, "Oh, that's a good key," or let's try it up a step or something, and then we would do a final track, and then send it back out, and then he would sing, and then he would send it back, and then we would put the orchestra on top, you know. And it was very interesting, but that was how that record came about. That was the first and second Rod Stewart American Songbook.
Elton John?
Elton John. All right. So he was working on his second Broadway show, Aida. Mm-hmm. He's done 3 or 4 now, I think, but his second one was Aida. And he was doing a concept album. And he got sick. Now, I had written, "Just for the taste of it, Diet Coke," was a commercial that I had written, and he sang that, of course, with Paula Abdul. There's another story there, but I won't go into it. So he sang that, and then he did just the other Diet Coke commercial where it was him and Satchmo and all the people from the 1940s movies, you know, live in with him, and that. And I had been his. I had written them and played the piano for them. And when he had went in to do the commercials, he pretended to play the piano, but it was me playing piano for him. So when he was working on Aida, he was sick, and he had written a song, but Shania Twain was going to sing it, and he had played it in a key that could write it in, and he was going to replay it in Shania's key, but he wasn't feeling well, and he was in England, and I was in New York, and he said, "Get me that guy who keeps playing my piano." And so they found me, because I kept playing the piano for his Diet Coke spots. And I played a Shania Twain tune in my best Elton John copped attitude, and he accepted it, she accepted it, and it went on the record, the concept album for Aida with Shania as simple piano vocal.
Cher.
Okay, now Cher came to see Zen Boogie that with Peppy, because she was friends with Peppy, and she had invited the cast and band of Zen Boogie to go roller skating, because she was back in the day that was the thing to do, and she was a roller skater, and we all went roller skating together and had a good time. And eventually she was doing a record. This particular one was called Cher, and Michael Bolton, who was also a friend mine because, unbeknownst to a lot of people, he was also, before he cracked out with like Georgia and some of his bigger hits started happening, he was brilliant voice. He was in a band. He was singing jingles. And, oh, America's Cup, Lipton Cup soup, And he was great there. You get the best that you can. And he was, I guess, producing this piece for Cher. And so asked me to come on in, and would I bring some synthesizers and fix it up and make it dance, and I did, and that was the Cher song.
Seems like you're one of the most versatile musicians we've had on the show, and I can't...
I'm like Zelig.
I can't get over, like, the range of your musical abilities. You're in a band, you've written scores for movies, you've even done themes for kids' children's shows. You wrote the theme for the Fox animated series The Tick in the mid-'90s. Tell me about how you were approached to do that.
I had written a couple of cartoon things for Sunbow Entertainment, Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars, for the great artist Adams, Neil Adams, and I had also done Sergeant Savage, and so the Sunbow people knew me, and they were part of Sony, and they were doing the Tick series, and they asked if I would submit a theme song, and they said we just need it to sound different than other cartoons. Was the only direction they gave me, and so I took a look at what they call the Bible, the pictures of the characters and their descriptions and whatever, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a big band that has gone wrong? And so I got on a phone call with the people at Fox and Ben Edlund, the brilliant cartoonist who came up with the Tick, and I started singing it. I said, what I imagine is a bunch of bass trombones going dop twee dop 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 twee dow, and then you hear the trumpets dop twee dop 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 twee dow, and the Gene Krupa drums and the stuff, and that's his sort of theme when he jumps from building to building. It's Gene Krupa drums, right? And the guys at Fox started laughing, and Ben said, "This is funny," and I said, "Well, yeah, a bunch of bass trombones." He says, "No, not that. You singing it sounds funny. Can you do a demo where you sing it?" So I said, "Sure." So I went in and I recorded the theme, but instead of using any bass trombones, I sang it all. Dop twee dop 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 twee. And they loved it, and they went with it, and they let me write the whole score.
It's very jazzy.
That was that.
And your wife, Elise, is also a musician, very talented. Tell me about how you met her.
Oh, my God. Well, first of all, let me put this out to your audience. If you want to hear a magnificent pianist, the person who I wish I could play like, listen to my wife, Elise Morris, Morris, Elise, like for Elise. She has a website. Who knows how current it is, but she's got some tunes on Spotify and tunes on iTunes and stuff. A couple of videos out there of her playing live. We just finished her first record, which is an amazing thing to do at our advanced age. But she's been she played with Joe. Oh my God, I can't even believe it. Is she really going out with her?
Joe Jackson.
Jackson. She was in Joe Jackson's band. Thank you very much. And she went on tour around the world with him, and she's also written with Doc Pomus and great guitarists and wonderful people. And she's been just taking her whole life quietly developing her craft. Anyway, I met her when World Hunger Year was putting on a show to raise money for hunger in the world, and I was the director coordinator, and she was one of the acts who auditioned. It was jingle people who sang commercials and wrote commercials, and we were the special people. And she came in, and I was introduced to her as a Balkan yodeler, and she was adorable. And I said, "So, okay, yodel a little Balkan for me." And she, with all the balls in the world, she came on up, strode right up in front of my face, and went, and I was like, I love this woman, and I have loved her ever since. A couple years went by. I was actually seeing someone at the time, but when it turned out that that wasn't going to work out, I started going through my Rolodex. I got up to the M's. I called Elise, and she's like, "Oh, your girlfriend dumped you." "Oh, okay." Well, I said, "Can I come over?" She went, "No, I'm not going to be some rebound, but you can talk to me." And so we spent like a month on the phone just talking and becoming great friends and telling each other about the lives we were having. And then finally she said, "I'm having a little trouble in my studio. One of my MIDI things, isn't working." And I said, "I'll be right over." And it was the first time we actually were going to meet. And I went down to her place, and which turned out to be literally 3 blocks from where I lived, and fixed her MIDI stuff, and she fixed me, and been together since.
After all these years in the business, how do you feel that the music business has changed? Do you feel that it's changed for the good or for the bad?
Well, it certainly has changed. I can't tell whether it's bad. It doesn't feel good. But I can't tell if it's bad because the new people who are getting used to coming into the music business, the Billie Eilishes and Eilishes and whatever are making it work from the way it is now, and so it still has an opportunity to work, but you can't. There aren't record labels, and music companies, and stuff like that, and guarantees, and there's still apparently payola. So that was always bad. Give somebody money and they'll get you into a festival or something like that. But it's just different. It's the sign of the times. It's a lot different. I wish people weren't looking at their phones while they're crossing the street or driving, but they do. The technology has changed who people are. There are some people who can transcend it and garner some intelligence and know what the word garner means. And there are a lot of people who are just getting stupid by it and believing it. And it's not the music industry, it's the world. It's a lot of, it's just possibilities. Whoever said in like 1850 or something that everything that has been, that can possibly be invented has been invented, wasn't correct. And so the music business is a small part of everything that is changing. I find it interesting that everybody comes to New York, to make it as a musician. Not everybody, but people come to New York. I'm going to be a musician in New York. And I once added up, the best I could, the number of jobs for musicians there are in New York. There used to be 20 to 30 people in Broadway pits when they originally did, Oklahoma and Brigadoon and those sort of things. And there were 30 people in the pits. Now there are 10 people in the pits, in Broadway pits. Shows like Dear Evan Hansen, won the Tony.
Mm-hmm.
10 people.
Yep.
And so say there's, on a good day, say there's 25 musicals running. That's 250. And even if I'm generous, that's 500. Let's say it's 20 people for all of them. That's 500 people who are working. And then there's a couple of bars, So say there's another 100 piano players and another 100 bass players who are working in some bars, maybe a sitar player in an Indian restaurant and something like that, who have a semi-regular gig. And then there's the wedding bands. So another, 200 people who are in bands who are, playing out, doing the 60s at weddings and stuff like that. And then audition pianists, another 100 of those. If there are 1,000 musicians working in New York, I'd be surprised.
Unbelievable.
And when you really think about it, and there are people on lists. Every Broadway musician has 5 subs, is allowed 5 subs. All right, so there's another couple thousand people who are, sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. But it's always been tough to say, I'm a working musician, even in New York freaking City. So that's where being an arranger, being an orchestrator, being someone behind the scenes whose sole purpose is to make other people sound better, to elevate the artistry of who hires you and to help their dreams of what they hear become reality, to be not precious about it, do what you're told, work for the money. Even Mozart, wrote the Magic Flute so he could survive. It's an interesting, sideways kind of fun business. Like when I did, and you get to do fun things.
Sure.
Gloria Estefan's Christmas album. The producer said, you got 35 people, I want you to do I'll Be Home for Christmas. So I said, great. And of course he imagined a 35-piece band. But what I did was I hired the American Boy Choir and 35 10-year-old boys in yellow blazers, and had them sing a crazy mixture of the Carol of the Bells and Little Joy to the World and things like that. They're singing little warped Christmas carols behind Gloria Estefan singing I'll Be Home for Christmas. I said, it's got to be about memory and sadness. You're always thinking, I'll be home for Christmas. Oh, yeah. But it's the saddest song ever written, if only in my dreams, which means I'll never come home for Christmas.
Yeah.
I'm going to be stuck in this war. I'm probably going to be bombed. I may not live tomorrow. So I'll be home for Christmas in my dreams, have everything ready for me in case I make it back. It's very compelling, and so I wanted to write something that was, not in the box. And that is what has made living my life so much fun, staying outside of the box as I can.
We got a little bit of time. We got about 6 minutes. What other projects are you working on right now? I know you mentioned one earlier, but you got anything else in the works?
Well, I do. There are a few. They're mostly theatery things. Right now, I've been promoting my wife, Elise Morris's record, which will be released very soon as well. I am working on several theater projects. One, a great story about a woman in the early 1800s who wanted to be a doctor, but of course they thought women's brains couldn't be doctors, so she had to disguise herself as a man. And it's a true story.
Wow.
One about we're trying to make a TV special about the Just So, Rudyard Kipling's Just So project.
Okay.
Trying to, just keep all the fires open, I guess. It's nice that my phone still keeps ringing. I've got a sort of a cottage industry as a synthesist where people from around the country who have dreams of bringing their musicals to fruit on Broadway or off Broadway or just in a production, who don't have the capabilities of doing this sort of thing. They hum their melodies or they play their little piano demos, and then they send them to me, and I send them back an orchestrated, beautifully finished, sung with proper singers demos of their tunes, so that they can better sell them to producers and stuff. So I do a lot of that, and I do a lot of work for people in festivals who need tracks so they don't have to hire a band, because festivals, oh God, theater festivals, they're like brilliant and the bane at the same time. I mean, you can win them and you can get your show on, but you have to produce the show yourself, so it costs like $100,000. If you win, it costs you $100,000.
That's insane.
So I try to make the price go down a bit by having them not have to hire a full band, and I'll make their tracks for them. It's all very interesting. It's just a lot of work that I'm thrilled to still be able to do. And some of it is creative, all of it is creative, and some of it is creative from a writer's standpoint. But lots of keeping the fingers nimble.
And where can people find your music? Do you have a website you can plug? Social media?
I have a website. I haven't updated it in like 5 years, and so there's an old picture of what I used to look like. And I don't even know if the MP3s on it work. I had the Music of Your Dreams was my website. They can certainly read how well I was doing up to 5 years ago. And maybe they can hear some things. I have stopped promoting myself because I used to have a really huge ego, and things in my life in my personal life have changed so much that I realized I'm not as important as I thought I was. I'm just here to do good work if I can, and so I've sort of stopped. I'm not on social media at all. I used to be on Facebook and on everything, and I stopped. So I'm easily findable, and I love when people write me, and I'll answer any question anybody ever has, and I will help anybody with anything I possibly can. Musically, I just feel I'm sort of here to serve, and that makes me happy, and so that's what I'm doing. And the work still comes in. I still get paid, for things. I just did a Broadway show last year, called Getting the Band Back Together. It didn't run very long, but that happens. Nothing is running now. Broadway's closed now, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's closed.
It's crazy.
So it's crazy. So it's all very entropy. There's a lot of entropy, and so I'm just going with the flow and enjoying my life. I'm watching my kid ace her music college, and all of my kids, they're all doing great. My family. Well, that's what it's about for me. Get to play piano at the same time.
This has been a very inspiring evening. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Stanley, it's amazing that you found me out of nowhere and asked me to even do this. It was a blessing and a pleasure.
And you can come back on any time.
Well, you let me know when.
Absolutely.
All right, Stanley.
Good to see
Play
you.
us off with something.
All right, we'll play a little bit here. Here's Balance.